There is a silent clock ticking, not the one on your wall, not the one on your phone, but the one inside your life. And unlike all the others, this one never resets. It doesn't stop for your doubts. It doesn't pause when you procrastinate. And it certainly doesn't care if you're not ready yet. Stephen Hawking once said, "However difficult life may seem, there is always something you can do and succeed at." Coming from a man who was told he'd have only 2 years to live and then went on to live over 5 decades more, we must ask ourselves a haunting question. What's our excuse? Today is not just another video. This is a warning, a wake-up call, a whisper from the edge of time itself. Stop wasting it. Time, it slips like sand through the fingers of those who try to hold it too tightly. And yet, for most of us, it's not the slipping we fear, it's the realization, too late, that we never tried to grasp it at all. In the quiet solitude of his thoughts, Stephen Hawking came face to face with the finality of time. At 21, he was given 2 years to live. 2 years. While most young people are making plans for decades ahead, he was told he wouldn't have the luxury of even a few seasons. But here is where the world turned. Because, rather than collapsing beneath the weight of such a sentence, he stood up metaphorically, spiritually, and he started to race time, not against it, but with it, as if it were his most sacred companion. You see, most people treat time as if it's infinite, as if they can afford to waste hours like loose change, but Hawking knew, deep in his bones, that time is not generous. It gives and it takes, and the only thing that matters is what you do in between. He lost the use of his limbs. He lost the strength of his voice. He even lost the ability to hold a pen. But he never lost the power of his mind, and he chose to pour everything into that one gift. He became a living reminder that the body may break, but the spirit, if you allow it, can stretch beyond the limits of flesh. Most people would have retreated, but Hawking advanced. He explored the very beginning of time itself, theorizing about singularities and black holes, while most of us struggle to stay focused for 5 uninterrupted minutes. While others delayed their dreams until they had more time, he worked with the urgency of someone who knew he didn't. The lesson is so profoundly clear. You don't need perfect circumstances. You need a decision. You don't need more hours in your day. You need more meaning in your hours. How many mornings do we spend scrolling through distractions? How many years have we placed our goals on a shelf, waiting for someday? Someday I will be a thief. It steals the present by promising a future it may never deliver. Stephen didn't wait for ideal conditions. He couldn't. His condition was a ticking clock louder than most, and yet, in the face of everything he couldn't control, he chose to focus on what he could. He chose to think, to imagine, to contribute. And perhaps that is the most radical act anyone can commit in a world so full of noise. To focus on what matters most. There's a strange comfort in excuses. They protect us from the risk of failure. They justify our hesitation. But when you strip them away, when you stop telling yourself why you can't and start asking how you might, something shifts. Suddenly, life doesn't feel like a foggy someday. It feels urgent, immediate. Electric, Hawking's life wasn't just a scientific contribution. It was a spiritual blueprint. He taught us, without saying it directly, that the greatest loss is not in death, but in the time we waste living half-heartedly. We often think that productivity is about speed, but Hawking showed us that depth is far more powerful. It's not how fast you move through life. It's how deeply you feel it, how courageously you engage with it. Whether your seconds are filled with doubt or meaning, with hesitation or impact, think about the choices you've been delaying, the words you've been afraid to say, the dreams you've buried under layers of comfort and fear. What if time is not asking you to be faster, but braver? Hawking didn't outrun death. He simply refused to stop living before it came, and in that there is a quiet nobility, a whisper of rebellion. A refusal to die while still alive. We often wait for tragedy to wake us up. But must we really wait for loss to teach us how to value what we have? Why is it that people only start writing their book when they receive bad news? Only start forgiving when they see the end drawing near? Only start appreciating the moment when it's already behind them? Stephen Hawking's legacy is not just the brilliance of his discoveries. It is the clarity of his life. He lived as though each moment carried weight, and it did, because when time is no longer assumed, it becomes sacred. You may not have a diagnosis hanging over your head, but you do have a limited number of days. We all do. The illusion of safety in the future is just that, an illusion. The question is, how will you honor the time you have? There are two ways to live. One is to sleepwalk through your days, eyes half open, heart half closed. The other is to walk with purpose, to breathe fully, to love fiercely, to show up again and again, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. Hawking's body may have failed him in many ways, but he lived in a way most of us can only imagine, fully aware of time's fragility and yet never afraid of it. Maybe that's the secret, not to fear time, but to respect it, to use it like fire, not to burn you, but to light the way. So when you find yourself reaching for distractions, remind yourself, this moment is a one-time offer. It will never come again. Use it like it's your last chance to speak the truth, to create beauty, to live awake, because Stephen Hawking wasn't given more time than you. He simply used his best, and now the question becomes, will you? And so the question lingers in the quiet that follows. Will you? Will you take what you've been given, not what you hoped for, not what you feel entitled to, but what is, and turn it into something meaningful? Or will you wait, as so many do, for the stars to align, for the perfect mood, the perfect motivation, the perfect moment that never arrives? Stephen Hawking did not wait. He didn't waste time negotiating with fate. He lived with it side by side with the ticking clock. He made peace with the inevitable and in doing so became timeless. But we often treat life like a rehearsal. We act as if the real performance is still to come. We scroll, we postpone, we numb ourselves with routine and distraction, as if we have forever, as if we can delay purpose until tomorrow and still expect a meaningful life today. Yet the truth is more confronting. Life does not delay itself to match our hesitation. Time does not slow down to let us catch up. And meaning, it doesn't wait at the finish line. It's hidden in the quiet moments we so often overlook. There's a strange tragedy in how easily we fall asleep in our own lives. How we can go days, weeks, even years without really being present, without looking up from the noise and truly seeing what's in front of us. The people we love, the passions that once stirred something inside us, the stillness that could teach us everything if we'd only listen. We chase productivity as if it were our purpose. But what good is a busy life if it's built on avoiding the very things that give it meaning? What good is success if it comes at the cost of presence? We worship efficiency, but forget that time, when used with intention, doesn't need to be fast. It just needs to be full. Stephen Hawking's life reminds us that presence is not a passive state. It is a choice, a discipline, a rebellion against the autopilot so many of us live on. He chose to be here, fully, despite the pain, despite limits, despite the temptation to give up. And this is where the real reflection begins. How much of our lives do we actually experience? How often do we pause to feel the weight of a moment, to listen to silence, to look someone in the eyes and really see them, not just glance, but truly connect? We've built a world where speed is king, where we measure success in deadlines, likes, and followers. But Hawking's clock didn't tick for followers. It ticked for meaning, and when you're racing time, you don't waste it on things that don't matter. So why do we? Maybe it's fear, the fear of beginning, the fear of failing, the fear of facing the reality that our lives are in our hands, and no one else's. It's easier to pretend that we're waiting on a sign. But deep down, we know we are not waiting. We're hiding from our potential, hiding from the effort it takes to change, hiding from the voice inside us that keeps whispering, "There is more to you than this." Stephen Hawking heard that voice, and he listened, not because he had more time, but because he had less. That urgency stripped away all excuses, all distractions, all the noise. And what remained was the raw, undeniable truth. Life is what you do with what you've got, not what you're waiting to get. This is the uncomfortable mirror he holds up to all of us, not to shame us, but to awaken us. You don't need to be dying to start living. You don't need to lose everything to appreciate what you already have. And you certainly don't need permission to become who you were meant to be. Time is not the enemy. It's the canvas, and every day you're holding the brush. So ask yourself, what are you painting? What story are you telling through your choices, your focus, your presence? Not someday, not next year. Now, there's a strange irony in how often we fear death, and yet live as if we're already asleep. We dread the end, but rarely make the middle count. We speak of dreams, but rarely act on them. We say we love people, but often forget to show them. Not out of malice, but out of habit, out of distraction, out of time squandered on the periphery rather than poured into the center. But meaning doesn't live in the background. It lives in the hard conversations, the silent prayers, the courageous first steps. It lives in the commitment to not waste this breath, this chance, this day. Stephen Hawking may have been confined to a wheelchair, but his mind traveled farther than most ever will. He mapped the stars with a body that could not move. He inspired millions with a voice he could no longer use. Why? Because his spirit was awake, because he saw time not as a burden, but as a sacred flame, one that burns brightly and briefly and must be used wisely. So, what will you do with your flame? Will you bury it beneath the weight of indecision? Or will you let it burn through every excuse, every delay, every fear that's held you back? You don't have to do everything today, but you do have to choose today, to be present, to begin, to wake up to your own life. This is not a call to hustle. It's a call to honor, to treat time not as a resource to spend, but as a gift to the steward. To stop measuring your worth by what you've produced and start measuring it by how fully you've shown up. Stephen Hawking's life wasn't loud, but it echoed. It wasn't fast, but it was full. And in the quiet gravity of his legacy, he left behind not just answers about the universe, but questions for all of us. What are you waiting for? Why are you still holding back? And when will you decide to live? So when will you decide to live? Not just to exist, not merely to float through the motions of routine, but to really, truly live, with your soul awake, your attention sharpened, and your heart pulled forward by a sense of purpose greater than your fears. This is not a question meant to provoke guilt. It is meant to invite awareness, because the tragedy isn't that life is short. It's that so many of us spend it asleep, not physically, but spiritually. We go through years like fog, barely noticing what we're becoming, who we're missing, or what we're losing in the name of comfort and control. Stephen Hawking never had the luxury of pretending he had forever. And maybe that's why he lived so fully in the spaces that mattered most. While his body declined, his spirit remained on fire. He didn't waste energy on what he couldn't do. Instead, he doubled down on what he could. His life became a silent rebellion against the idea that limitations define worth. It wasn't about how many things he could tick off a list, but about how deeply he chose to engage with what remained. He once said, "Intelligence is the ability to adapt to change." But beyond scientific theories and mathematical precision, he showed us something far more human: grace under pressure, clarity in the face of collapse, vision when everything around you says surrender. He made it clear, there is always something left, always something to give, something to create, something to feel, and it doesn't have to be massive. It doesn't need applause. What matters is that you give yourself to the moment, that you show up to your life not as a shadow, but as a force, because time may be a mystery, but wasting it is not. We know when we're doing it. We can feel it, the way the hours slip by unremembered, the way we keep postponing our real lives, telling ourselves later, when all we have is now, and still we wait. But Hawking didn't wait. He loved. He studied, he wrote, he taught, he laughed, he lived. Inside the constraints of a broken body, yes, but far outside the constraints of a limited mind. We often talk about leaving a legacy. We want to be remembered, to make our mark. But legacies aren't built in grand declarations. They're made of smaller, quieter choices. The conversations you choose to have, the work you choose to do with your full heart, the courage to begin again after failure, again and again. This is where meaning lives, not in the distance, but in the details. We live in a culture obsessed with speed, with big wins, with overnight success. But Stephen Hawking's life wasn't built in an instant. It unfolded slowly, quietly, against all odds. Every page of his work was a victory over limitation. Every idea he shared was a testimony to patience and persistence. His greatness wasn't in doing what others couldn't. It was in not stopping when he had every reason to. That's the real wake-up call, that you don't need to be extraordinary to live a meaningful life. You just need to wake up to the time you've been given, to stop waiting for motivation and start honoring commitment, to stop searching for the right path and start walking with the intention to find it. You are not behind. You are not too late. You are exactly where you need to be to begin again. Because life is not a race against others. It is a race against regret. And regret is not born from failure. It is born from inaction, from silence, from ignoring the quiet ache that says, there is more to you than this. Stephen Hawking didn't give us just scientific formulas. He gave us an example of how to persist, how to wake up each day inside a fragile body and still decide to contribute, to create, to live, and maybe, more than anything, that's what the world needs right now. Not more urgency, but more presence. Not more speed, but more depth. Not more pressure, but more meaning. So here you are, alive, breathing, listening, and maybe this is the moment you stop treating your time like something you can casually spend. Maybe this is the moment you start treating it like something sacred, because it is. You may never know how much time you have left, but that uncertainty is not your enemy. It is your clarity. It is what makes this moment, this breath, this decision, this heartbeat precious. Don't let it slip away unnoticed. Tell the people you love how you feel. Begin the project that scares you. Sit in silence and really listen to yourself. Look around, not to compare, but to see, and most of all, show up. Not because you have to, but because you can. Because despite all that's gone wrong, despite all the reasons you've collected to play small, you're still here. And being here means there's still time. Not to do everything, but to do what matters. Stephen Hawking's body is gone, but his life continues to echo not just through science, but through the quiet reminder that we all have something powerful inside us. Something timeless, something waiting to be remembered. That echo is yours to carry forward. So as the hours stretch ahead, don't rush through them. Don't numb them. Don't wait for another sign. This is the sign. This is the moment. Live it so fully that when you reach your final breath, it doesn't feel like a theft, but a completion, not a loss, but a release. A soft closing of a life that was fully seen, fully felt, fully lived. Not perfect, but real, not measured in years, but in presence. And maybe that's all legacy ever really is, a life lived awake.